So what's old is new again, and I'm not talking about myself. I'm trying to work on some of my setup and cues in training to emulate what I found a lot of success with in the past. So for deadlifts on this particular day, I had about 8 doubles at 165 kilos, really working at hinging on the hip, getting my grip, bringing my shins to the bar, and then trying to brace my back. And I thought these went pretty well. And it could be a little deceiving because it's lighter weight in this case, so I'm not going to have a ton of form breakdown. But I think if I can emphasize this in the lighter weight and work on building up in these positions and cues, I think it'll have good carryover, and things felt really good on this particular day. From there, I moved on to deficit work, so I did a couple of sets. You're just seeing one of them here. A 1.5 inch deficit. Again, I found a lot of success doing these as an accessory movement, so I'm excited to have them back in. But I don't want to overload it too much because these could potentially hurt. Not to mention, I also had to squat on this day. So it was a tough day. So I had deadlifts from the floor, deadlifts from a deficit, and then a couple sets of 8 on back squats. And I'm really working here on pushing my knees out. Also focusing on looking down a little bit more, keeping my torso at the same angle if possible, and a couple other cues that are kind of related to what you might find in starting strength. But I do think my knees tracked better this whole week, so that's exciting to hear. But again, as the weights move up, it'll be interesting to see what happens because I really start to get a lot of that knee cave when I become overly fatigued, which you might not be able to tell at this point, but I definitely was, again, given the workload up till that point. The next day, a lot of bench work, a lot of pressing work, some shoulder work as well. I'm only showing you my main flat bench session here, or at least the sets, only because that's all I felt was necessary. So a couple of sets of 7 here. And a big part of this routine for me is going to be feeling out how I feel throughout the course of it, and then making changes as necessary. And then maybe once I've run it through once or twice, I'll probably release this in case anyone wants to run it as well. And again, it'll be a free program as always. So here's another squat day for me. This was a heavier day, 200 kilos. Wanted to get a straight on view. And again, you can see my knees did track a lot better. Have some hip shift there, but we'll focus on that after we fix the knee issues. And then bring it back on to another bench day. And things moved again. So I'm basically emulating what I did before, but also add in more assistance work. And overall, the week went well. It kicked my butt, which was great. And I hope you guys all have a good training week. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.